Good afternoon. I think we can finish there, really. So, maybe we should just offer to dedicate this to the Padma. So there's a secret self within us that's dedicated to that highest self. Padma. Well, it's a privilege to be here, and Akhilesh Mishra, the ambassador, has spoken wonderfully, and he's spoken about W.B. Yeats. He actually is the translator of the Upanishads, so without that I wouldn't have known anything about it. I had to read it in English first, and I still like reading his translation of the Upanishads. He did an amazing job. So he went with Swami, he went to Malta for a couple of months, and they thought the weather will be good there, we can spend a few months translating. They both got sick, but despite that they kept translating, and now we have that little book called The 10 Principal Upanishads, which is a gem of a little book which has an amazing translation of the Upanishads, which is world renowned. And so if it wasn't for W.B. Yeats, I'm not even sure if I would be standing here. So, he is certainly, we owe him a lot of gratitude. And then, of course, he couldn't have done it. He didn't have any Sanskrit, really. So, Purohit Swami had to explain to him what it really meant. So, the two of them worked together, and they did a wonderful job. So, my gratitude is really to them. And so, I got to know about the Upanishads because I went to the School of Philosophy, and so on the bookshelves, there were copies, you could get them for £1.50. And so I had my copy, and I was very moved. First time I read that, I was extremely uplifted by that text. Technology is a wonderful thing, but it can also be a little bit of a curse when it doesn't work. Well, it certainly has helped us a lot in the last few years when we could only meet online. And it did put the rest of Ireland on the map, which was one of the concerns of the ambassador, that we will only have, for example, Sanskrit in Dublin. What about the other part of Ireland? So now I'm glad to say that there are lots of people all around Ireland who can follow Sanskrit online, and they are doing that. So on a Saturday evening, I see a lot of Indian children from the ICCR, from Dr. Kumar, lovely to see you. And they are learning Sanskrit online, and their parents are there in the background, and they are learning lots and lots of wonderful Shanti mantras and grammar and so on. So it's really good to see that. And then on the Saturday afternoon, there's another group of other students, mostly, well, they're all adults, and they are learning Sanskrit and so on. So with the technology, it's amazing. On a Tuesday and Wednesday morning at 6:30, we have chanting classes, and people from as far as Australia and South Africa and all over the globe are joining in. This morning we had a group chanting, and it's just wonderful that they wish to do that. And all they need to do is just log in. There's no membership, no fee, nothing. They just have to join, and they can chant away. So it's a bit odd because I'm chanting there, and it's totally silent in my room, except I can hear my own voice. They can hear me, but I can't hear them. They're all mute. So it would sound a bit chaotic if we heard everybody. So the question really, these sort of questions I keep, especially when I'm in India, they say, why are you doing Sanskrit in Ireland? You know, and what's the benefit? You get a job. Well, I did, and I can't even retire now. I just want to keep going. So, yes, and then, how can Sanskrit be learned easily? That's often a question that's been asked, and where and when can it be studied? So, I hope to answer those questions. So, oh, and I just got an email this morning from somebody you may see there. I was thinking about the effects of listening to Sanskrit and your talk today. I hope your afternoon at the embassy is wonderful. I put into words, English of course, what I feel. Congratulations. So, that's just one of the students. I got an email an hour ago. So, just to get us in the mood, and it's hard to listen to people all the time, so you'll hear some music. So we often chant this at our assemblies in John Scottish School, because Yogi loves saying this. And we're really giving gratitude, blessing from all these amazing elements. So if we can't express gratitude, our well-being will suffer. It's very important to show gratitude and really consciously express gratitude. And Sanskrit is good for that. It has all the wonderful songs and so on to help us to be grateful. So that's one reason. And nowadays we're more aware of well-being, physical and mental well-being. And that's really Sanskrit par excellence is the language for that. So a few years ago, the man in charge of the School of Philosophy in Ireland, Shri, he sat down with me and we wrote an article together called "Why Does My Child Do Sanskrit?" And that became quite famous, especially in India. A lot of people read that, and it was translated into a lot of Indian languages. Because people often, they know that Sanskrit is important, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And he is really good with words. He was very good with words, and he actually helped me a lot to put this article together. So this is a famous statement: the qualities of Sanskrit will become the qualities of your child. That is, the mind and heart of your child will become beautiful, precise, and reliable. Because Sanskrit is beautiful, precise, and reliable. So now the ambassador has already mentioned quite a few things I was to say. So that's no harm, because you need to hear things again and again before they really register. So, the following slide is mentioned, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And as he says, it's become a bit of a platitude, the whole world's family. But not if we really mean it. When we actually mean it, it means, it becomes quite a powerful thing. And I have experienced this firsthand in my visits to India, that people have treated me completely like that, like family. So when I got sick, they got me into hospital, they looked after me. I wasn't allowed to put my hands in my pockets ever. When I was fed, I was educated in Sanskrit, they looked after me completely. Nobody ever said, "We want money," it's not a tradition. And a few years ago I had to write a book, and my teacher in Pondicherry was sick, so I couldn't go to Pondicherry. So I had to go to Delhi. And the last thing I wanted to do is in a hotel. So I asked some students that I knew in Delhi, could they look after me, Sanskrit students. And they said, "Look, you're totally welcome." And I stayed in student quarters. There were 5 of them. They all 5 went into one room, and I got the other room. So that's hospitality for you. And they also had made a rota, so that somebody would look after my breakfast, somebody would look after my lunch, somebody else would look after dinner. And one morning they had forgotten, one night they forgot to pack my dinner, and they woke me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, "You haven't had your food. Wake up, we have to feed you now." So I sat at 2 o'clock in the morning with them where they were sharing their food with me. So their hearts were really in it. So that's hospitality for you. Well, that is, Atiti Devo Bhava, they say in Sanskrit. So the guest is God. That's really what you feel. The guest is God. It's treated like God. So, now some of the, actually Goya is in this, hopping around in that bag. We put these things to music, and the yogi find these lovely projects. They learn Sanskrit, and this is good for the rest of the world at the same time, because this now YouTube clip. We added some verses. So for example, okay, people you don't really like, are they your family? Yes, they're also your family. So they might be in unlikely places, but they're all your family. So especially those people, we should include them as our family. It's not often that I have an audience where one of the members in the audience is actually on the screen. So it's sometimes hard to accept everybody as your family, but the message is clear, isn't it? Everybody is your family. So we do a lot of acting in the classroom, as you can see. We're pretending to be horses there. So I'll carry on with the... You can look at this on YouTube later if you want to have a look. So, now, why do we need Sanskrit? So, well, we need Sanskrit. Sanskrit can really help with the wisdom that's needed to have a place or a country or a society where there is freedom and wealth for all. And unless those things are clear, people will be greedy, corrupt, do all sorts of things. So it's very important to teach people something else, the good values. And they don't just come without doing anything about them. You really need to spell it out. So this is the purpose of Sanatana Dharma. So Sanatana Dharma is a very, very broad concept. So they're really human laws suitable for all of us, and they're capable of bringing about prosperity and freedom, which we all need. And it doesn't matter where you're from. And so this is a global issue. It's not an Indian issue, it's not an Irish issue. So to give you a taste of Sanatana Dharma, here is a verse from which explains Sanatana Dharma. So you've got you need patience, forgiveness, body control, non-stealing, purity, sense control, wisdom, self-knowledge, truthfulness, and non-anger. Now that is a definition of Sanatana Dharma. So there's nothing particularly Indian or Irish about that. The whole world understands this. And as long as you practice this, you're practicing Sanatana Dharma. As long as you don't, you're not. So you can't become a member, you can't get initiated, you simply practice this. So, and there is no organization, building, nothing like that. It's just literally, you practice this. This is your life's mission. And so every human being should really know that. And we all do, actually. It's in our hearts, but we need to learn to express it and live by it. So, So that can show you the universality of this teaching, of this language, of the. So, as the ambassador said, it's not just a language; it's a way of life. For me, Sanskrit is a way of life. It's not just a language. So when I'm in India, I'm living very much that Sanskrit life. Sanskriti also means refined. It doesn't mean just a language. It means literally being refined. So that's what human beings aspire to. We should always improve a little bit, shouldn't we? So refining ourselves is partly what we need to do. So Sanskriti is the word for that. But to show you how universal the outlook of Sanskrit is, here's an ancient text from the Rig Veda. It's saying that noble thoughts come to us from everywhere. So, again, they're not saying, look, it has to come from the Vedas, or it has to come, it's saying, let noble thoughts come from everywhere. They could come from any place. They could come from Peru. If they have a noble thought, let's listen to it. So the idea is to be inclusive rather than exclusive. And we have had a lot of harm done through a lot of religions where the exclusivity took over and people were murdered, etc. in the name of religion. So that's not the way to go, obviously. Now, Shri came, there's Shri, a teacher from John Scott as well. She had this verse which really struck me. This is about ladies. Where women are honored, divinity blossoms, and wherever women are dishonored, all actions, no matter how noble, remain useless. So it's important to, really state that clearly, because again, I think there's a lack of understanding about women, and it's really important to acknowledge their role in society, the big picture again. I'll just show you a few practical verses from the Bhagavad Gita now. So one of them is so maybe you could guess why that picture is there. Anybody? Why?
He's doing his work. He's not in case I want to be win.
Right.
He's just doing his work.
He's just doing his job, but he doesn't mind about the outcome. It's about the focusing. And what is our expression that we use? Like, do we not have an expression, keep your eye on the ball?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? So this is, that verse is really saying that. Keep your eye on the ball. Don't get distracted with outcomes. No, if you, why are people so stressed? Because they're always thinking about outcomes. If you don't want to have stress in your life, you just don't do outcomes. You just give yourself wholeheartedly to the job, and the rest will take care of itself. That's what the verse is saying. So it's very, very simple. Yeah. So here's another one. So the picture is a bit easier to follow. Whatever the greatest person does is also done by others. Whatever standards they set is what people follow. So that's just a fact, isn't it? It's so important for leaders to show leadership, good qualities, because everybody will do what they do. Gabriella Bernal, the singer, she has a wide following on YouTube, about 500,000 followers, and she has sung the Bhagavad Gita. I've asked her to do every verse. During lockdowns, I needed something to keep myself sane, and so I decided to retranslate Bhagavad Gita online in color-coded, so that you can see, say, the red words go with the red translations and so on, so you can work out the meaning. And then she sang every verse, and it's now on the website called Sanskrit.ie. So if you want to listen to that, you're welcome. So she sang every verse, and beautiful. here is a famous thing that can go wrong. Do you see the two pictures? A backseat driver, exactly. Yeah. Have you ever been accused of that? So anyway, so what is it saying really? So better to do one's own duty poorly than another's duty well performed. That might sound strange. Like, so do your own duty. It doesn't matter even if you do it poorly. So rather than somebody else's duty, and you do it properly. So better to die one's own duty, the duty of another invites danger. So this sort of wisdom, that's so important to understand. So don't be a backseat driver, sure, but there's a lot more there. Now, this is on a battlefield, so Krishna is giving Arjuna advice, so that's why he's also saying better to die in one's own duty, because on the battlefield, people can die. So, this one is probably the first verse I was ever introduced to in Bhagavad Gita. So, Anudve kakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chaya svayaya vyasanam chaiva vangmayam tapapuchate. So, speech which doesn't cause distress is truthful, pleasant, beneficial, and supported by practice of recitation, constitutes the discipline of speech. So, for example, we sometimes think we're speaking the truth, but are we really, is it hurtful that we're not speaking the truth? Is it, is it pleasant? If it's not pleasant, it's not the truth. Is it useful? Is it beneficial? If not, don't say it. So we would say much less, I think, if we live like that. But anyway, it's so it's important to know what it means, because children have said to me afterward, when we learned this verse, I never knew really what it meant to speak the truth. And they said, oh, now I understand what it means. Because we always tell them, speak the truth. But it's not enough to say that. You need to spell it out a bit. You need to say, look, it has to be, it can't be hurtful. Now, how often do we think we're speaking the truth is actually hurtful and not making anybody any happier or any wiser? So famous leaders there who knew how to speak the truth. Abdul Kalam is a famous president of India, and he was actually a Muslim, born as a Muslim, but he died as a universal man. Everybody in India loved him because he embraced all religions, everything. He was just a universal man. So people have deep respect for Abdul Kalam. So you can see this book is full of wisdom. And there is, for example, telling you to be moderate in all things. We know this, but it's not so easy to practice, maybe. But obviously, without that, how can you live well? So it's, being moderate in food and diversion, so sporting, play, and so on. Be moderate in all those things. Action should be disciplined, and moderate in sleep and waking. It also tells you it's not for people who don't sleep. This is not useful. So if you're like that, you will not have sorrow in your life. And this is very famous. We often use this in assemblies also. Sarve Bhavanti Sukhina. Again, if we really took this to heart, the world would be a different place. So really, may all be happy. May all be without disease. May all see good things and not be in any misery. So without that, with that, the world is just a different place. But it actually needs to be practiced rather than just talked about. So that's the wisdom of Sanskrit section that I want to talk to you about, just to give some examples. Obviously, I can't do that all today. There's so much there, but just a little flavor of that. So now the language itself. So it's just very, and unless I spoke about this, it's very thoroughly made. Words aren't just randomly, picked. They come from 2,000 sounds, which are very basic root sounds, the hatus, and from that the whole language is developed. And those are their activities, and from that all the language has manifested. So a very step-by-step approach to make words consciously. So they're not just a random, the examples Akhilesh Mishra gave were really good examples. Like say, where does the word cow come from? It doesn't really tell you a whole heap. But if you go to the root of a word and you can understand, this activity is related to that, then, it gives you a deeper understanding of each and every word. So, that's quite an amazing thing, that the language has been structured in such a, thoughtful way. There is really, I can't think of another language. So we have some words in English that we can say, oh yeah, that came from that. And that's really interesting. So that's the whole area of etymology. But this language is based on etymology. That's the difference. So it's not just bits and pieces. It's actually the whole language is based on etymology, and every word is built out of very simple activities. So, just to have a look at the Sanskrit alphabet, you can see it's made up of rows and columns. So the mouth positions are along the top. So your throat, the back of your mouth, the roof of your mouth, the teeth, and your lips. There are 5 mouth positions. So it's very clear where you make a sound. And then what efforts are to be made in those are, if you go horizontally. And this actually is a story about Mendeleev, who invented the periodic table, who actually had access to this alphabet, saw it, and realized the periodic table is not a line of elements. It has rows and columns. And nobody else had thought of that. But he happened to work with a Sanskrit scholar, and they must have had conversations about that, and he decided, because there were gaps in this periodic table, there were only about 60 elements, and there are now 92 stable elements. So he had to leave lots of gaps, and then later he could fill them in, because he knew, okay, that element is missing. Because he laid it out in such a way, he realized what the gap should be, and the periodic table was invented. And how do we know this? Because he used Sanskrit words, ekat, 3 and 3, 1. So you might say boron ekat, boron 3, boron 3. So he used Sanskrit words to express the gaps that are in the periodic table. So interesting that he could make use of the Sanskrit alphabet to connect to a totally different area of science, of chemistry. So it is very liable, because if you see a letter, it will always, if it says ka, it will be ka. That's it. You couldn't say the same about English, unfortunately, because if you learn the alphabet, that's one thing, but there's no use when you're actually learning words, you have to do something completely different. So I'm not here to put down anybody or any language, but it is hard to find another language which has this systematic, even the basic building blocks of a language are the letters. So they are not really in any sequence, any order, when you look at the Roman alphabet. And the problem also is that 63 languages, European languages, use the Roman alphabet, and they all have their own version. So when I'm speaking Dutch, I say something else, and when I'm speaking English, I say something else for those letters. They are doing many jobs as letters, but there's no system behind it. No, they're doing a great job, but it's not systematic. So, something that's well built lasts, and something that's poorly constructed, of course, doesn't last. Yeah, it's the same for languages. So, reliability is really the test of time. So 5,000 years ago, people, there was a battle of Kurukshetra, and that people spoke Sanskrit that I can understand. So that's unusual that 5,000 years later, a language can be recognized. So if you look at, for example, this text here, that's English. but it's actually Beowulf, the oldest existing text in the English language, and it's really Anglo-Saxon. If you want to know what it says there, you need to study in college, but it's actually the English language. So that is about 1100 years ago, so not 5,000. And so then if you look at, say, the Canterbury Tales, you can work out a few words. And but it's not, you're not going to, like, again, you need to really study that to know what it's saying. Now that's about 600 years. And then you go to, let's say, Shakespeare. That's difficult English, because it's like different English than we're used to. So you can see the English language keeps changing. And languages do that. All languages will accept Sanskrit. So that is just a feature. Because they are not planned. And they're it's like the bicycle. That's not well made, it's going to be destroyed. So you can see here, well, the tree on the right has the little red words, the hatus are the basic sound forms, and then from that spring the other words. So, how can Sanskrit be learned easily, and where and when can it be studied? Is the question. And so I say, well, if you have children, bring them to John Scholar School. And it's between 5 and 12, but a lot of you are a bit over 12. So if you want to learn Sanskrit, there are, of course, adult courses. A lot of them are online now, so you can join them. Then we do make use of, in our secondary school, we don't do Sanskrit, unfortunately, but we are doing a well-being course based on Ayurveda and Yoga Sutra, so at least that much. And as I mentioned before, there's chanting. Anybody who's here can join in. And so if you want to look for Sanskrit classes, you go to that website, practicalphilosophy.ie. You'll find Sanskrit classes advertised there. They don't cost a fortune, I think €50 a term or something, so 8 weeks. Then there are Gita study groups as well, so there's a lot going on. So, now just to tell you my own little story. So I've been in lots of places there. Bangalore there, bottom left, so to learn Vedas, then I will go to that Gurukula. Outside on the retreat is usually the best place. And Pondicherry on the right, so that's on the coast. And that's the Sanskrit teacher there helps me write books. And I've gone to some camps where they teach teachers, like in New Delhi, and other places that you can see on that map. So, where we are discussing Sanskrit, I'm sure. And so I teach English in that Gurukula, and then they teach me Sanskrit. So it's a really good way to exchange. I'll just give you a flavor of chanting. So, like that, I learn my Sanskrit from teachers, and I just repeat everything they say, and then ultimately, at the end, you get to know it. So this is in Pondicherry, so my teacher there is on the left, Narendra, Dr. Narendra, and he is fantastic now. He never wants to be in the limelight, but I always tell everybody about him. And the beautiful views on the sea, fishermen and all that. And I cycle around there. So, here's some Sanskrit we do in John's College, so to teach birdbathing, for example. The children don't know they're learning, but they are. So like that, they sing away and they love this. And then, of course, we do do other words. We do, shikshaka, shikshayati, tsonna, shikshayasi, and so on. So they just learn it off, and then they are able to say. We really discovered one thing from Narendra, and that is never teach single words. Always teach meaningful sentences. Don't teach a language it's very boring and also not meaningful. So teach the shortest meaning that we have is in a sentence. Never, there are one-word sentences, but just always teach, any language in a sentence rather than single words. So that has been really useful advice, and the color coding has really helped lots of things, really. The music, the acting, so it's enlivened children, it's definitely, and I find that adults actually quite enjoy it. So, just to give you one other little flavor of this. So there we do Deva Asti. There is a God, or God exists. Ask God what is done by God, give it to God, speak after God, what is God's name? There is intelligence in God, and how God can hear. Now that's actually grammar exercise. There's 7 cases there on the left. So then they do it with another word. So they get the song. So like that. So then we go to the students. There is a student. Ask the student what's done by the student. Give it to the student. Speak after the student. What's the student's name? There is intelligence in the student, and so on. So, student, come here. So like that, we can go through the whole thing. They love this one. The ghost. There is a ghost. Ask the ghost. What's done by the ghost? Give it to the ghost. Speak after the ghost. What's the ghost's name? There is intelligence in the ghost, and no ghost come here. So it's very simple. You teach sentences, but actually there are a huge amount of grammar exercises behind the scenes that they're learning, and they don't need to really hear all the grammatical terms. They can just learn it like that. So there you see the same thing in Sanskrit again. And so on. So and then they do the same with Bala and Vaidya and so on. So it's very simple. You practice and teach them sentences, and they love it. So I think that's more or less what I was going to say. There could be some questions. There is a famous, I like to finish with a saying from a famous guru that I follow, Shri Shantananda Saraswati, and he says about the Sanskrit language, this is the good companion, good guide, and a great friend. Journey with it, and wisdom is simple and sure. So, thank you. So, is that it, or do you have any questions?
Any questions? Well, just a remark. When you took the good bike and the bad bike, you took your own as the good bike.
Of course, I don't want to buy a bad bike. Yeah, that's true.
We all have a bad bike, but we can correct it by Sanskrit.
Yes.
Thank you.
When do you introduce this alphabet?
Yes, I didn't show that here. So we do have little booklets. Actually, Marion, who is here, she designed the booklets. It's her influence that. Because she said, look, what I want the books like this. And they have to turn pages like that. So we did it like that, and it really worked out. And then she had, look, I don't want too many letters on a page, and so on. So we went through it. And it's a very good system. So it's called Patalika. There are 2 little booklets. They're work booklets, so you just write in them. And by the end of 2 booklets, you can read and write Sanskrit. They're Vanagali scripture. Then, so now, again, Narendra had a new way of thinking of that. So he might go, take all the vowels, because they look like the consonants when you add bits and pieces. It's a bit complicated for most of you now. So, And he had a new way of thinking about this, which just simplifies a lot of learning. A lot of you here know Hindi, so you'll know the Devanagari Lipi. But for us Westerners, that we really have to start from scratch. So it's always a bit of an effort. So, but this, the children devour those booklets. They just can't wait to go to that next page. And what Marion also said, that I want coloring on the sides. And I thought, but that's nothing to do with Sanskrit. But actually, she was right. You need some time to just absorb your lesson color for a little while. They shouldn't always be, I would be thinking, oh, that's a waste, they're not learning Sanskrit. Oh, no. Just let them color for a little while. And some of them are ready much quicker than others, so they have more time to color. So things like that are, there's intelligence behind all that. And so it made a lot of a difference. And again, Narendra had thoughts about everything, like even that. So simple, and that you learn words quickly. Even if you don't know the whole alphabet, just begin, okay, I can already read this word, I can already, oh, fantastic. It gives you confidence. Yeah. So.
We only start to write the first times.
So junior and senior infants.
It's all
It's all oral, yeah. So that's Kira there, who looks after that. So she looks after the tiny little, I find that magic, how people can do that. Because like they need their nappies changed and everything, I feel. So it's fantastic people can do that. Or not. Maybe I'm exaggerating now, but it is a bit like that. And yet they can learn language so much more easily because when did we learn our languages? When we were 2, 3. So obviously, when should you learn a language? When you're really, really young. They all learn the harder it gets, isn't it? So learn a language when you're very, very small. And I think that we should do that. They should think about it in India even, in education. Why not start this with toddlers? Because now I know something about it. They used doing that, and they have at least 7 million people in India. But in India, even 7 million people is not a lot. But they are making great efforts to really get Sanskrit into the public domain. And I'm sometimes I would learn the more refined Sanskrit, so I'm not always happy with what they're doing, but I'm impressed that they can get so many people. Yeah.
When did you expose to Sanskrit, and what made you start learning Sanskrit?
Yes, yeah. So I started philosophy, and the question is, who am I, what am I? That really got me there. You can't answer those questions easily. And so I looked at the religions that are here around me, and I followed some of them. And sometimes it was a bit exclusive. Like, say, if you become a born-again Christian, then you say, oh, everybody else goes to hell. That didn't really feel right. And so on. So you've got all these, but the answers weren't really there and now I find I get a deeper understanding of Christianity. So it doesn't mean, in my own religious outlook has deeply increased from it. Yeah. So those questions can really be addressed very well through this. Yeah. I think it just makes you, let's say, even if I study plays or anything like that, I understand it's partly because of Vedanta. So it just gives that scope that it opens up doors. Yeah. Like a master key.
Just a casual question. How many children are studying Sanskrit in Ireland right now?
So I think in the primary school in Northumberland Road there are 72 children, I think, and then in the old Connor in Checkhill there are 35. So we have 2 primary schools, and so they should get more hours. I mean, I'm a Sanskrit teacher, I think they should do Sanskrit all day. But so they should have at least once a day, because it's hard to learn a language unless you have daily contact with it. So 3 or 4 times, that's a start, but it's not enough really. Yeah.
And in Ireland, anywhere teaching Sanskrit in schools or
No, well, the VHCCI and so the temple community, they have now asked me to start teaching children. And I did it before, but the parents weren't there. And the parents are saying this is very important, you should learn Sanskrit, but they would go and watch a rugby match. So then the children are thinking this is not so important. So now the parents are also there, because it's online and they can see. So it has made quite a difference. So if the parents say it's important, but they actually go and watch rugby, then the children know that's not important. So the key is that parents are also a little bit involved. It's like when this Suzuki method for learning piano, all these things. People are always, the parents get involved, and then it really is a successful story. If the parents say it's important, but they don't show that, well, where are the children? Yeah. So, and it's lovely. I mean, there are 12 children there now, and one adult. 2 adults, yeah. And so it's lovely to see that. Yeah. So, like this, you just keep going. And keep your eye on the ball and don't think about the actual numbers. And also, I'm concerned what's going to happen. You see, I'm 66 now, so I won't be around forever. So what about the teachers in the next generation? So I'm waiting for pupils from John Scottis to start becoming the Sanskrit teachers. So, no, that hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. Yeah. So, I know she is. That's what I'm saying. So, yeah. Good.
Thank you so much.